The Egypt of 5,000 years ago was by far one of the most prosperous places on Earth. Unlike the city builders of Mesopotamia to the north, whose archaeological remnants hint at a dour and pessimistic people, brought together out of a necessity to escape the uncertainties of the natural world, yet still subject to them through the regular droughts and famines of their homeland. The people of the Nile exuded confidence and charisma, and a certainty of their place in the world. For many thousands of years, ever since the end of the last ice age, lush, fertile grasslands had spanned both sides of the Nile. Even the vast Sahara Desert just to the south and west had only recently begun to become the arid wasteland that we know today, after many thousands of years of prosperity. The fossil remains of elephants, lions and gazelle throughout the vast extent of this barren desert remain as a testament to this ancient time of plenty, now far in the past. The Nile itself proved to be a beacon of hope for multitudes of wanderers who had walked northern Africa and parts of the Middle East for millennia. There they found not only a huge river abundant with marine life, but also a vast and seemingly inexhaustible source of food in the form of animals, fish, and over time, as the secrets of agriculture began to seep south from the Fertile Crescent, farming. Unlike the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers to the north, where agriculture was first intensively harnessed, the Nile could be relied upon to flood its banks every single year between June and September. This annual flooding became a central part of the existence of these proto-Egyptians. As the secrets of agriculture gradually crept into the region, or even as long-held agricultural techniques, such as carefully cultivating wild grasses, were honed and adapted to the abundant and regular supply of fresh water, farming began to take off like wildfire. This agricultural revolution, in turn, led to a huge growth in population, and in time, the development of a number of small statelets along the river. The most important of these states, established by around 3500 BC, were Lower Egypt, based around Memphis at the mouth of the Nile, and Upper Egypt, based much further south around Thebes. Over the centuries, as these two states became more and more socially stratified and developed, largely due to the immense boosts to prosperity that the Nile granted, another byproduct of human growth began to rear its ugly head: war. Inevitably, the two kingdoms of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt were always going to come to blows, and over time they did, although very little is known of these early engagements. A number of pharaohs or kings arise during this early dynastic period, yet most striking of all was the ruler of Upper Egypt, known simply as the Scorpion King. He was probably the second ruler of his state to bear that name, and although almost nothing is known of his reign besides a few fragments of archaeological evidence, it was Upper Egypt that eventually triumphed over Lower Egypt, establishing itself as the unifier and stronger partner of the two kingdoms. Existent motifs and artifacts from this period, known as the Early Dynastic Period, depict early Egyptian warfare in much the same way as they depict feasts and ceremonies, making it entirely possible that early warfare in part had taken on a ritualistic aspect. Other influences include unmistakably Mesopotamian-looking warriors and items. Some scholars have even gone so far as to argue that the early Egyptian rulers, such as the Scorpion King, may have actually been Mesopotamian in origin, as city building and intensive agriculture in Samaria predated that of Egypt by a few thousand years. This influence from the Middle East begins to wane and then entirely disappear during the reign of the Scorpion King, and shortly afterwards during the reign of the next king to definitively rule over Upper and Lower Egypt, Narmer. It's thought by some scholars that Narmer may in fact have been one and the same figure as the Scorpion King, or even Menes, the first king to be recorded in the later Egyptian records, although no archaeological evidence has ever surfaced of Menes, leading to some suggestions that he may have not been a single ruler, but a half-remembered collective of the Scorpion King, Narmer, and another ruler found in archaeological evidence, Ka. It's thought that early rulers of Egypt may have actually kept irrigation to a minimum as to control the flow of food and prosperity to ensure their continued power, influence and wealth. Over time, this probably led to the quasi-divine perception of pharaohs, who could quite literally control the waters of the Nile, and thus the continued existence of society, and they used this flagrantly to their own personal advantage. The Scorpion King was probably no exception to this, yet he is unique in the fact that according to the archaeological evidence, which portrays him with insignia from both the Upper and Lower Kingdoms, he seems to have been the first ruler to have successfully held sway over both Upper and Lower Egypt, though it's also possible that this depiction portrays the image he wished to convey to his people, rather than being representative of his actual power. Nevertheless, despite the confusing nature of these early proto-dynastic rulers, the Egyptians soon began to write down what they wanted to tell the world about themselves. They did this prolifically for the next 3,500 years. The first dynasty, established by the Scorpion King, Narmer or Menes, or even all three, lasted until around 2910 BC. It was replaced by a second dynasty, which ruled until around 2680. It was then, during the time of the third dynasty to rule over Egypt, that something extraordinary began to happen. The pharaohs of Egypt had gained such mastery over the waters of the Nile, and by extension their subjects, that they began to construct vast and colossal edifices out in the desert to ensure their swift arrival into the afterlife. The third dynasty, the first of the Old Kingdom, which reigned supreme until around 2181 BC, and also the most absolutist and the harshest of all Egyptian rulers, were the first of the pyramid makers.